There's Geritol. I forgot what the title was, so I had to look it up. But I think we're ready to begin on Reflections from Retirement. And I'm the most newly retired, so I have to defer to my brothers because we've been together for a long time. A long time. To my right is Mark Kopfer, who has retired from, Wamego, Highland Park, Shawnee Heights, and then Blue Valley West. Mr.
You forgot Grinnell
Well, I didn't know you when you were in Grinnell,
and Alma.
and I didn't know you when you were Alma. Well, those two as well.
Cheese Capper, Kansas.
That's right.
And Ken Umbeer's resident. Ken Umbeer's the Libertarian candidate for
Oh, there you go. And then Mr. Steve Wood, a Fort Scott product, debated at Pittsburgh State University, home
we
of the
both
Gorillas.
judged Steve
That's
when
right.
he was in high school.
That is correct. We both judged Steve when he was in high school. He has coached at Emporia, Lawrence High School.
Parsons.
Oh, yes, Parsons. We've got to start with the Balkans. Parsons, Emporia, Lawrence High School, Free State in Lawrence, and he finished his career most recently at Blue Valley North. And I'm Pam McComas, and I just finished my career at Topeka High School, and so here we are. Mark's been the longest retired, so I think, Mark, you want to talk about some of your reflections on transitioning into retirement, things we should have known when we first started, etc.
I will tell you, transition to retirement is not hard.
And we have Joe Wyckoff in the audience who has retired for the second time.
And the reason it isn't hard is one of the nice things about being in Kansas, and if you're in Kansas and you teach long enough, you get a Capers retirement. And if you work with a retirement guy, they're going to tell you some things to do, and I tell you make sure you do that. But you're going to get 75% of your 16 highest quarters every month, okay, divided by the year. And as a result, since you aren't paying any taxes in Kansas and your federal bite doesn't have any Social Security on it, you know what? It's almost the same money you were making and you're doing nothing. I substituted for 2 years, but I did that because we had kids in college. And the sub-pay was just enough to pay those bills. When I turned 62, I took Social Security. My financial advisor said, take it while you know you can get it. You don't know where you're going to be tomorrow. You could be dead. He said, don't wait till you're 70 because you might not make it to 70. There's no guarantees. It makes sense to me. So I took it. And after that, I didn't work at all. I still don't work except for I do some projects. In any case, never worry about a transition to retirement. You'll find plenty to do. You can always read. And if you need to, you can buy a house on a lake, put it down there. That's what we do. I'm going to give you a preface. The preface is really simple. And it's this. You are coaching in a different time, especially if you're younger than when I started. But I'll tell you, basically, the challenges are the same, regardless. But there is one thing that I would argue. I would argue it is actually easier to coach debate today and than it was when I started. And one of the reasons is, the first thing is I'll tell you, at the time that I started, there was the old guard, there were the middle, and then there were the youngsters, and it was locked out. There wasn't much interchange between the people. I was fortunate enough, when I started coaching, Pam started coaching like a year after. I had people that instantly they grabbed onto me and helped me. Larry Brown, Roger Brannon, especially those two, and then Diana, the years she was at, I student taught for her, so she was very helpful. But basically Roger Brannon and Larry Brown were like the older people that helped me along. Then I met Gail that first year, and that helped. But in any case, that helped a lot because I had an older mentor. And so for those of you who don't know that have an older mentor, get one. It helps. Somebody to ask questions about. There aren't a lot of you that are older. You know, when we're talking about Vicki and Chris being the old guard.
Mel?
You keep looking at me. You can stop anytime.
This is not possible at all. Here, I'm going to give you 4 reasons why I think it's easier to coach. 1, I think right now, with the state of education in Kansas high schools and everywhere else, that talent is easier to attract in debate than it was before. Because all you have to do to get talented people in your program is show up and show them that you are willing to work around conflicts and be understanding. Now, I know you're going to say, conference saying being understanding. Believe it or not, I am an understanding person. Okay? And I will tell you, it also really does help, especially at this time, is if you've got 100 or more kids on your squad. The last 10 years that I coached was the easiest time I had because I had 100 kids on my squad, or more. And the more the better, the merrier, also the less I have to teach besides me. The reason that that works is I've found that modern educators, especially even the young ones, many of your colleagues are not understanding, aren't willing to work around conflicts, and are not necessarily all that invested in making sure students have a positive activity or a positive encounter. Second reason, debate offers the only experience in many of the buildings in the state of Kansas that actually asks students to think for themselves. You are the last bastion of please think for yourself. They don't let them do it in math, use this formula. They don't let them do it in science. They used to because they did a lot of labs. They don't do labs anymore. Social studies, regurgitate. English, read this and then tell me what I would have told you. And so I think, you're really lucky because your subject matter depends upon how the kids think and what they think and trying to make it work so it'll work in a debate round. Third, only activity where the kids get to make a decision in competition as the competition is occurring. I mean, football, they call all the plays. Basketball, they call all the plays. It doesn't make any difference. Everything has a preset strategy to approach things. I know, I like to say, well, we have preset strategies now, but that's all right. And once you figure out, and it took me almost 5 years to figure this out, the kids get to make the decisions in the round, and you have to work on them with decision-making instead of hoping they'll do what you want them to do. Once you can figure out that really your job isn't to influence them to make good decisions, debate slows down and it suddenly becomes easier. Because the onus for the work and the onus of thinking is no longer upon you, it's on the kids. And the other thing that I'll tell you is the nice thing about debate and why it's easier is debate is still one of the few activities, if your squad's big enough, to where you can trumpet your successes and hide your failures. You got a club, you got a squad of 100 kids, 20 of them aren't going to be very good. That's just the way it is. But you can still give them exposure, and you can still insulate them from people knowing that they aren't very good. And that'd be my preference. Now, here is the first piece of things that I learned over the course of time that I think is important. Debate, or for instance, doesn't matter. You need to remember that these activities are for every kid in the building. Every kid. If it's good for the smart kid, it's good for the dumb kid. And yes, when you have large squads or even any squads and you've got a bottom and a top, you're going to spend more time with the bottom. You know why? The kids need more help. There are kids that will walk into your room as your debate coach, and you know this because you're a debate coach, who'd be pretty good if you didn't say anything to them at all. Show them a debate, they look at it, they go, I got that. And then it's just a matter of getting them to work. So that'd be my first part of debate. Do work with every kid in the room, but don't think that debate is only for the elite. That would be the first piece of advice I give you. Debate is for everyone. The more kids you have in the program, the less of anything else you have to teach. My dream job ended up being, first, I remember when I first went to Shawnee Heights, I had 100 kids in debate and 200 in forensics. Not a very good blend for me. It took me almost 6 years to get the 200 in forensics down to where it was a manageable number so I could get somebody else to do forensics. Next. That's my first one. I have others. You may handle them.
Steve, you retired at the same time I did. Do you want to speak first?
Well, like Pam said, they both judge me, so they're older. And
Thank you for sharing.
what was the first thing? How to transition in retirement? Get a dog. The dog is much more understanding than your wife when something doesn't go right. The dog doesn't care about debate or forensics, and the dog has been good. Here's what my reflections. The first one would be that Kansas has. I kind of felt when I started there were all of these great debate coaches and forensics coaches, and they were like icons of what we did. And I felt like a little kid in the room being around these people. And I'm kind of intimidated today a little bit because I think we've kept that tradition and we've got some really, really good coaches and a strong program in both debate and forensics. I mean, what other state, my wife and I were talking about this the other day, what other state can have a debate tournament, like 5 debate tournaments on a weekend in a state of 3 million people and 9 million cows? We can have big school, small school, another big school, school in western Kansas, and they're all holding debate tournaments or forensics tournaments, and their building is full. And it might be a kid who's you've been lucky to get a tie on and get dressed up, but he went and did his pros, and the girl who was crying all week about having to do extemp, you got her to do extemp. And I think that's the strength of Kansas high school debate. And it really always tired me to hear people talk about the national circuit. What they do is great, and that's wonderful. And we have kids who can do that, and some of our kids maybe ought to do that. That's a different conversation. But for the most part, we do a great job, and you guys do a great job, and you should never be taking a back seat to anybody else around the country, because when Scott One comes to Topeka High, he's like, my God, Pam, you had 130 teams here. And that's just unheard of. And so it means we're doing a lot of things right. And that always bothered me when somebody would say, well, we ought to be like Texas. I don't want to be like Texas, all right? Their barbecue sucks. I don't care what they do down there with testing. They gave us George Bush. They gave us, a bunch of stuff that I'm not real happy about. I'm glad they're proud of what they do, because that's what they do. But in Kansas, I think we've always had this inferiority complex, and that we don't do things as well as everybody else. And I think we do. And I think that the activity was that way when I got here, and I'm happy it's that way when I left. And I know that, I've never felt this because I never felt like I was that important, but I know there's going to be quality tournaments. You guys are going to have really good kids debating in front of really good judges, and it'll be a lot of fun, and it will be that way for a long time. You always hear people say, well, the young coaches they're clueless, or this and that. It's like, no, they're not, because the ones I've seen are pretty darn good. But I think everybody in here is young. I
Younger
remember,
than you.
yeah, I remember Du Bois as following along behind McComas. Now, he didn't follow McComas; he was on the same bus.
He was trained at Topeka High.
And I remember a lot of you when you were in high school, and I think you carry on a great tradition, a great activity, that we have kids who, if we didn't have this activity, would be doing something else less worthwhile. And I think the one reflection that I would have is, I've had kids who were really good, and they were going to be good in spite of me or with me or whatever. And those were the kids that brought home the trophies or did real well at nationals or something. But the kids I still get a kick out of hearing from on Facebook or something, or that girl that debated for me at Free State that said, you know, I just got a new job and, you know, 40 years old, but I really feel like all the stuff I learned in debate forensics helped me get to where I am. And, you know, that's kind of cool because she wasn't a top kid. She wasn't a kid that any of you would have ever seen or heard of. And I know you've all got kids like that, and that's kind of cool when we know we're doing good for a lot of people. You look at the NFL website and you look at all the members and degrees, you look at, I mean, my God, I was at some tournament a couple of years ago, small school tournament, and the building was filled with kids. I mean, and no, there was no national champion probably wandering around in duet there, but those were kids having fun and learning, and I think that's the coolest thing. That's the only reflection that I could really give you. I think nobody helped me when I started.
It's like, the other thing I tell you is,
They were all mean.
Steve's really modest for the most part about the successes of his kids, but he does have one kid that was in the news recently. He was appointed as Supreme Court Justice in the state of Kansas. And he wasn't one of the kids. Steve's brighter and more capable kids, only in Kansas.
Well, he's friends with one of Pam's former kids who's on the right side of Young again, or Philip Hunt, or whoever. But anyway, we all have those kids, right? The ones that we are less than. I remember one time sitting at a NFL banquet, and I was sitting next to Roger and Doris Brandon, nicest people in the world, and they're talking about all the former Manhattan kids who are now professors and physicists and all of that. And I'm like, early in my career, I'm like, well, I know that one kid, he got on the county commission. The other kid got arrested. and that was the year that Roger had kids win the state debate tournament. And the topic was, for some of you that are really old can remember this, that the United States should, it was agriculture. Remember the agriculture topic? And the Manhattan kids won state. And I said, that's really funny, you know, all you farmers and hicks win state that year. 2 years later, we debated juvenile crime, and we won state. That sure reminded me, and still reminds me of, you know, you should have stayed another year. Oh, I saw it wasn't a topic on juvenile crime. But I think I feel very lucky. I had administrators who let me do what I wanted to do, who stayed out of my way, who gave me a job that I could put dinner on the table. My son went to more debate tournaments than anybody else in the world who wasn't getting paid for it, and he got babysit by NDT champions and you know, a lot of really smart kids, and we had him tested, and the psychiatrist told me that he is a Republican. There's nothing we can do about it. There's no drugs we can give him. So I have some of those guys to blame for that. But you guys, this is a really cool activity. You know that. You are the ones that get up and gas the van up in the morning. You're the ones who get out there when it's 10 degrees and go into some school and stay around from dark in the morning and dark when you leave. And I think the thing I would say is the kids, you're really good kids to appreciate it. And the parents do too. The parents love you because you're taking them away. But anyway, Pam?
When I look around this room, I think the thing that amazes me, and this goes back to the days of when I was a member of this organization as a student at Emporia State, how many women are in this organization. And one of the things that I have to recall is that 35 years ago, when I started coaching, was breaking down the barrier of the good old boys. And there was a good old boys network in Kansas, and this activity was dominated by men. And I think Mark mentioned it in his earlier comment, that old guard, they were very secretive. We had district tournaments where we were not allowed into the tab room. It was all done in secret, so there was no transparency. And for women, going into this activity, and that was back in the day when there were only 2 NFL districts in this state, East Kansas and West Kansas.
Well, when I first started, there's only one.
That's right. And when I was a student participating in this activity, there was only one NFL district, Kansas. So we've seen a lot of change. Just think about 2 NFL districts and only the first place winner went to nationals. And when I was competing in high school, the Activities Association did not allow us to go to nationals because there was a period of time when the National Association of Secondary School Principals had not endorsed the NFL tournament. And because we are a high school activities association state, they didn't allow us to go. So that became a problem. So breaking through barriers and seeing now more women in this activity in coaching positions, I think is a huge thing that I've seen over the course of those years. The second piece of advice, as I've reflected on not only my career of teaching, but career of coaching, is winning is not everything. It is not the be-all, it's not the end-all. It is all about the life skills that you give every one of your students who cross your door. You have no idea who you've impacted in the course of your career. Bless you. So my piece of advice is getting the most out of every kid, giving them those skill sets that they can go on to be successful. I think another piece is finding one's voice. You know, we realize that the National Debate and Speech Association, NSDA, got to remember it that way, formerly the NFL, one of their slogans is giving youth a voice. I would carry that over to giving yourself a voice. Finding your voice, whether it's finding your voice within your teaching organization like KNEA, within your local district NSDA group, whether it's in your league, finding your voice, but making certain that your voice is heard. More importantly, giving your kids that voice, whether it's in a student government setting, in your classroom, as a teacher, as an advocate for this activity, I think is very important. Another reflective comment that I would make, don't live through the success and failures of your kids. All that's going to do is make you crazy.
Exactly.
I will tell you this, kids will let you down, kids will disappoint you. Our own children have disappointed us at various times, even our dogs, even our cats have disappointed us. The point is, you can't let that break your heart. If you do, it's going to kill you. You will know when you are ready to retire. Sherry's getting ready to make that move at the end of this school year. Steve and I were contemplating it a lot last year. I made my decision by the end of September that this was it. There were other factors that factored into that decision. Stupidity at the central level administration would be at the top of my list. And there's only so much stupid you can deal with, and only so much stupid you can stamp out. And I decided that's a battle I don't want to fight anymore. there are other things that are far more important to me than fighting that battle.
I think the other thing that Pam says about fighting the stupid was, one, I would tell you this, that if you aren't happy in the job that you're out at, find another one. Somewhere, there are people that will appreciate what you do and support you. And what I mean by that is, you know what? There might be better jobs than you have. Go for them. Don't necessarily be content with what you have when you can have something better. Two things that I tell you that relate to that. One, follow the money. Go where they will pay you what you are worth or closer to it than the place that you are.
You want to tell the Blue Valley West story about your sister?
And sometimes you even have friends that will aid you in that because they'll tell somebody don't want the job and will recommend that they hire someone else. That relates to her. But one of the things, you deserve to be compensated better. And you know what? If people are compensating you better, it does tell you that they appreciate what you're doing more, or they wouldn't compensate you that way. I went from Grinnell, where I was the first person to take kids to a speech or debate tournament in the history of the school, to Alma, where I started a debate program, to Wamego, where they had a program that consisted of 10 kids, and in 3 years I had 60 in a school of 400. And then I went to Highland Park because I got married. Went to Shawnee Heights because it was a bigger program and paid more. And I'm not afraid to admit it, Blue Valley's a cash cow. It's a cash cow. I make more in retirement than my sister, who taught the same number of years, has a master's degree and a specialist degree, et cetera, all that stuff. My retirement is $2,000 a month more than hers. And it's because I went from Shawnee Heights to Blue Valley. Follow the frickin' money. You'll be happier when you retire. And also, I would always tell you that, if you move to Blue Valley, do it. Because the money's better and you get to work with wonderful people. And the one person you get to work with, I'm going to tell you about this, is Riffer. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you about Riffer. I don't know how many of you talk to him very often. But I've learned as much from Chris as anyone that I've ever been associated with in debate. Chris is the Zen master. He has more insight, more wisdom that he can impart to you than almost anybody I know. And you know what? He's more than willing to impart it if you ask him. He's great. So I'm going to trumpet for just that short period of time. I'm going to trumpet Riffer. Riffer's the Zen master. All of you need to remember that.
So now people are going to be bugging you for advice as well.
But don't ask him about his.
I'm going to disagree with both things you said. I don't really like Riffer. And it was never about the money. I was always, it was women that got me to move to. And a couple of those didn't work out so well. So that goes back to what I originally said. Get a dog. That's helped a lot in this last relationship. It's always like, don't you and the dog have something you need to do? And so we'll go outside and do something. I think that Pam is right. When I started coaching, most of the coaches were male. And it was probably, I think it's why Pam turned out mean. It's because she had to be mean to deal with the older kids. Didn't you?
Well,
Because they
I've
would
been
be-
fondly called by the late Billy Tate, the bulldog.
Yeah, because in those days, the student congress would be kind of an agreement amongst the coaches of which kids would go, and I've always heard about those. But along with what they said is, don't worry about how your kids do. I mean, you do worry about how your kids do. But one time I was in a van when I first started coaching with Ad Ely. And if you don't remember Ad Ely, he was a big man and he had a deep voice, and he was what you'd think of when you thought of a debate coach. I mean, he was like the who you'd cast out of Central Casting. And I was in the van, and this was really cool. We were going from one school to another, and I was riding with Ad. And I was like in my second year, and I said, Ad said, "You probably think it's important for your teams to win." And I said, "Well, yeah, I want people to think I'm cool, you know." And he said, "It's more important what your kids learn. Your other coaches have already decided whether they think you're good or not so good." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's deep." And I said, "Ad, what do you think? Am I good or am I not so good?" And he said, "I'll comment later." And I was like, whoa, I just got shot down by a veteran. But it is true. I mean, you know, I'm sure that when, you know, I had a team that did well, people said, "My God, he's got good kids." and you know, we all do that, you know. I mean,
I think we have the luxury of coaching in a state that has split seasons. So for those of us who do it all, we can focus on policy debate first semester, and then we can segue second semester into forensics, LD, public forum, and Congress. To me, that's a luxury. If I had to do what Missouri does, or a lot of other states where you're doing it all at once, and you're hosting tournaments where Friday night is debate and Saturday is individual events, and you might have some out-rounds for policy debate, I think we'd be going the way of Missouri, where there is no longer any policy debate, because it's become public forum. And for a diehard old policy debater, I would hate for us to ever lose that particular event in this state for a whole lot of reasons, because a lot of the skill set that kids get that are life skills are in that particular event as well as others. But I think it's so important because it develops that critical thinking and the whole idea of argumentation, evaluating evidence. We know how the news media is misusing evidence and telling us what they think we want to hear. And that's crazy, but I think we get the advantage of that split season and relish that. If you want to go solo, and many of you have gone solo, where you coach only one semester, and you might or might not be the assistant coach for the second semester, great. I think that allows you to get reinvigorated. The comment that Melanie Ralston made in the session that Russ just had, don't forget you have a family. Whether it be children or the dog to go home to, or a spouse to go home to. There is more than just living, breathing, and dying this activity, and all of us sitting here have done that.
Debate will consume your life if you let it.
Yeah.
I was consumed with it for at least 5 years, maybe 10. And that was 2 wives. And what I tell you is, until you get to the point where you can maintain balance and you let debate consume you, it's rough on relationships and it's really rough on you personally. And so what happened was, finally, the thing that allowed me over the course of my career to get to where I was balanced, I don't know if I'm balanced yet. I'm unstable.
Linda has helped you in the last 25 years.
Yeah, she's helped a lot, but what I would tell you is, one of the things that helped me, like when I first went to Shawnee Heights, I had 100 debaters and 200 forensics. And I was consumed. I didn't get anything done but those 2 things. And like I mentioned, it was a while, but by the time that my eldest son turned 6, I was able to get rid of forensics, and I didn't have to do anything second semester. That was a godsend. And that stayed that way until I went to Blue Valley West, then I took forensics again. And you know what? It was manageable at that time. Part of the reason why it was manageable is my kids were in junior high. Mark was just graduated, just off to college. The junior high kids were easier to deal with than an infant. And in addition to that, I had learned a valuable skill that helped it not consume my life. And it took, I'm a slow learner, because it took me a long time to figure out that there is a difference between working hard and working with. First 7, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9, maybe 10, I don't know how many years, I was convinced that I needed to do the work to make the kids successful. So I spent a lot of time cutting cards, I spent a lot of time putting together arguments, I spent a lot of time doing that. And what I discovered over the course of time is, it is important for me to cut cards if I cut them with the kids. It is important for me to work on blocks if I do it with the kids. But that I shouldn't take that home and do it, because they're the ones that should be doing that. And only when I work with them can I make them more productive. Otherwise, they are reliant to rely on me. And I'm not terribly brilliant. So relying on me just means that there's going to be some people that are a lot smarter, that maybe even be high school kids, that will come up with stuff that I don't know how to deal with. And so, and I tell you, I would tell you that until I was able to set aside the idea that we're not winning, people judge me as being a dumbass because we're not winning. And was able to figure out, the kids are just as capable of working, doing this as I am. Why don't I let them do it, and I'll just sit there and guide them. But I will tell you, make sure you sit down and cut cards with the kids, or the cuts you get will be terrible and continue to be terrible, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't. And even if they find something that's really good, they don't know where the good part of it is. You have to work with them enough to where they can figure that out. So I tell you, it's really important to maintain balance. Don't get concerned. Be a faster learner than I was. I'm a slow learner, always have been. And if you do that, your things will be much easier, much better for you. And so that's kind of a dovetail off of what Pam was talking about.
Going back to relationships and having one husband for 41 years and having trained him to be a better cross-examiner, by the way. Having somebody there who can help in the process of raising your child. I guess Gail and I have the luxury of having some awesome husbands who have taken our children to dance lessons, piano lessons, voice lessons, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, baseball, football, whatever, when we were off traveling for a Saturday. But relationships go further than just our immediate relationships. Relationships with our colleagues in our own building, cross disciplines, relationships with our own cadre of people is so important. Don't isolate or insulate yourself. Open yourself up. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. That was one of the comments that Russ was imparting to new coaches. Don't be afraid to ask. People may seem to be intimidating, but they're not. Go ask them. There are people here who will share with you. And the other thing to think about would be the relationships that become lifelong relationships with kids that you've had, whom you've coached, who now have gone off to college, have gotten married, have built their careers. Those are relationships that they continually come back and share with you. To me, that's all part of this family that we have built. Joe, I want to ask you, you've retired twice, most recently a year ago. Give us some insights of how you feel outside of no alarm clock.
I don't know, but I spend more money retired than I ever did when I was working.
That's true.
That's it.
Debate can kind of, and forensics can kind of suck you in, because I was pondering this all year last year. And I come home some days from school and say, I'm never going back there again. I hate education, I hate kids, I hate everything. And my wife would say, well, you gotta go back, you gotta go back tomorrow. And then I remember coming home from a tournament where we had beaten Washburn Rural, and a number of times. And I said, this is fun, this is killer. I'm going back to school on Sunday to work on this some more. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But I think one thing that we always forget, in Kansas, when we start that single season, we start, in 2 weeks? And you just
Next
go and
weekend.
go and go and go. And you're sucked in, and you come home and your life is, God, we lost to that Topeka High team that's running this, and we've got it, and that's cool, because Christmas comes up like that. And
And you buy your wife a propane tank
well,
for a birthday.
or the Thigh Master. And that's probably not a good Christmas present. Anyway, it does, it sucks you in, and you forget, like after you have retired, how, like I'll when school started, I got some text messages from people I work with, and they're like, we're at the convocation today, it sucks as much as last year. And I'm like, oh man, I'm sitting on the porch with the dog. And then it's back to school night. I'm here being questioned about how to coach debate by a mom who debated for Bill Davis 25 years ago. And it's like, whoa, this is cool. I'm not there. And I think that's the fun part, is you get sucked in. But then once you're out of it, it's like, wow, birds sing. And NFL tournament could always do that to you. You go to that NFL tournament, and it's 2 downs and you're out, and you keep hoping those kids will get that next up, and you're like, it starts on Saturday and you're going and it's noon and you forgot to eat lunch, or you went down to the lounge and they had stale chips and Aldi Pop, and all of a sudden it's 6 o'clock and the sun's set, and you've been in this debate round watching your kids, hoping they win so they can go to Fargo. And then you walk out and the birds are singing, the sun is shining, there's kids on a swing set, and you feel like you've been paroled. And that was some of the best advice I ever got, was Roger Brandon said, during a tournament, during Saturday afternoon, leave, walk around the building. We do this in the fall. Go out and sit in your van, listen to a college football game, because, man, you know what it's like on those Saturdays after a forensics tournament or a debate tournament. You're like, I feel like I've been in prison, and so that was really good advice that I got. And find somebody to go for a walk with, or do something like that. And you get, I don't care anymore. Anyway, you do get to meet a lot of people that are really unique over the years. You get to meet a lot of people you really have fun with, and you're stuck in a lounge talking to them. But you also get to meet some of the unique characters in our activity. The guy who wore 2 shades of plaid from Mark City. The guy who thought he could send psychic messages to his kids in debate rounds that would help them win. The woman who fell down the stairs and broke her leg, but she was, and that's terrible, but they don't mean to make fun of it, but she got up and hobbled on out on her own. It was like she took it for the team and drove herself to, it was like a broken ankle or something. It's like, whoa, that woman was tough. And you get to meet these kind of people, and people don't believe you, that being at Coffeyville High School and having somebody yell at the top of their lungs, look out, she's a-coming your way.
And it's a cow.
And it was a cow. It was a legitimate black Angus cow that someone had let into the building. And I told Darryl Harbaugh, I went in, I said, there's a cow in your building.
Don
And-
Lerdy took care of it.
And he said, I don't want to hear any of your jokes. Quit making fun of some of the other coaches. No, Daryl, it's a cow, a real live, like 600-pound Angus cow. And he's like, I don't believe you, I'm sick of your crap. And then this little girl poked her head in, little sophomore, and said, Mr. Harbaugh. And he said, there is a cow, isn't there? And watching Daryl Harbaugh try and shoo a cow out of the den while the cow leaves its mark on their new gym floor. Your gym teacher hates you having like hard shoes on the gym floor. Have them come in on Monday and explain to him that a cow took a dump in the middle of his famed arena where he's going to go 3-16. You know, and you just see stuff like that. I think that's kind of the cool stuff about debate and forensics is staying at the cheap hotels or eating at the place in Hayes where the woman didn't shave her legs and the kids couldn't eat because they were grossed out. But and yes, it was a chance to talk about feminism and gender issues, but they still wouldn't eat. And you just see stuff like that, and that's kind of what makes it fun. And you know, you guys need to remember how to have fun at these tournaments, or they'll tear you up.
One of the guys that coached in Kansas taught me a lot about having fun in a tournament, Dan Beck. And my favorite Beck story was back when Dan was coaching, I had a son that was 5. And his mother didn't want him the weekend of the El Dorado tournament, so Mark had to go to El Dorado. And when we get to El Dorado, I introduced Mark to Roger Brannon. I didn't introduce him that week to Roger Brannon. It was the week before, because weeks before, the same thing had happened. I took him to Hutch. And so Roger had taken him out in the courtyard to kick field goals with his football. So Roger thought that was great fun. But anyway, the Dan story was really cool. Mark saw Dan, and he looked at Dan, he said, "You're big." And Dan says, "You're not." And he was freaked out. So then we went into the thing, and then after about 15 minutes, the rounds had started. I had to go judge, and I was looking for somebody. I was either going to take Mark into the room with me because I had my Lego basket. But Dan said, "I'll watch him during the round." And so I came back and I said, "What'd you two do?" And Dan said, "Oh, not much." And Mark said, "No, what we did was really cool." I said, "What?" He said, "Mr. Beck taught me how to fly a bush." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, he had a piece of string and he stuck it in the bush right outside the front door, and he had me go hang on the other end of the string, and when people asked me what I was doing, he told me to say I'm flying a bush."
It pays to be nimble when you're coaching in case another coach tries to run you over in the parking lot.
I have no idea who that might be.
And Nava said to me, she tried to run you over, and I said, yeah, but I'm quick of foot. I'm nimble. But that's funny now. Kind of scary as I had that face full of gravel.
It was a state debate tournament in Salina, Kansas. We've had a lot of fun over the course of our years of being active as Kansas coaches. And we've had the luxury to have some good times, bad times, great times, mediocre times. We've had former students who have gone into the activity, Stephen being one of them, who's sitting here, who's one of my former kids. We've walked away. That's hard for all of us to do. Then it was time. So we're going to open it up for any questions of wisdom that you might want to ask of us, or advice, or do you want to have some comments, Mark?
Well, and then the other thing I'll tell you is sometimes you don't think you have a lot of influence over kids, and then you don't remember it as much. But my impression of a lot of things changed with Facebook. My wife complains about this all the time. She goes, "You post and you get 100 likes. I post and I get 5. And I said, "Well, just include me in your post." And so now she gets 105 to 125.
That's
She says, this is just not right. And I said, I can't help it. So really, I tell you, you do have tremendous influence. I'm more popular than my wife on Facebook, and I don't post nearly as much. And then the only other, I would tell you the other thing that is, if I had to tell you something that you needed to do to improve your ability to coach, it would be really, really simple, and has nothing to do with pay. And this happened to me when I was a freshman in college at KU in the spring of 1969. Went into the bookstore, got my packet for freshman English, and in it were 12 novels. And I went, what's this for? When the kid said, oh, you're going to read each one of those novels, and you're going to write a theme over it. I went, shit, I don't want to read that much. And one of the kids said, you'll read a lot more than that. You can have reading in every class. Oh, damn. So I'm walking out after pants or something. There's a little table there. It says, want to cut your study time? Learn to spend less time reading and concentrate better. Looks like a winner to me, and I signed up for a speed reading class. And I would tell you, of all the skills that I acquired, especially when I was in college, well, there are skills I acquired that weren't academic. But in any case, I took the speed reading course, and at the end of the semester, I could read about 1,800 words a minute. I continued at second semester, and I got up to where I'd get to 24. That's as fast as I could get. My comprehension rate was 95 to 98% of what I read, and it meant it took me 1/10 of the time to read what I needed to read. And you know what? That's a skill that really serves you well in debate. The faster you can read, the more you can absorb, and the more informed you can become. Now, I'm old, my eyes aren't as good, but I still read at 1,200 words a minute. So I read at a rate that's like this. I can get through about
I like
pretty
to
quick.
savor the words.
I don't, because most of them don't mean much.
It's the economy of life.
But that's what I tell you. If you have the opportunity and it doesn't cost you any money, take a speed reading course. You'll be a lot happier with yourself because you're going to spend a whole lot less time reading, and you can read more. Now, the cool thing is if I want to, I can go home and read a book in 2 hours if it's 500 pages. And my wife goes, damn you.
I don't know about that. I do want to, Kathy said I did have to say one thing, that she was very appreciative this last summer of all the work that the East Kansas and Three Trails District coaches did. It was really cool. I don't want to forget anybody, Jamel, Jared, Chris, Stephen, and my